The last Friday of June marked the start of my long-awaited 4-week summer vacation. After clocking out from work, I, Lars Lindberg, made a quick detour to my in-laws' house to pick up my 7-year-old daughter, Gwen. She'd been staying there during her school break until Felicia, my wife of 9 years, and I could finally begin our holiday together. This year's plans were simple. No big trips, no exotic destinations. Instead, we agreed to focus on some overdue home improvements, squeezing in a few short day trips if the weather cooperated. It was Felicia's idea, and I had no objections. Felicia usually finished work by midday, so Gwen and I were full of anticipation as we pulled into the driveway, expecting a cheerful welcome. Her familiar blue Ford Fiesta was already parked, a sign she was home. But the excitement fizzled the moment we stepped inside. Gwen's enthusiastic call of, "Mom, we're home," was met with nothing but silence. At first, I brushed it off. "She's probably next door," I reassured Gwen, keeping things light. But the empty house felt off. There were no signs of her usual preparations, no groceries on the counter, no little touches that hinted at the family fun she'd mentioned that morning. As the minutes ticked by, a nagging worry began to creep in. I considered she might have joined her co-workers for a spur-of-the-moment celebration to kick off the summer break. Yet that didn't explain why she hadn't told me. We always gave each other a heads up if plans changed. But 2 hours passed and still nothing. No text, no call. Concerned, I started making calls to her friends and colleagues, hoping someone might have an answer. Unfortunately, none of them could shed any light on her whereabouts. Felicia's office had wrapped up for the season with a casual coffee break before noon, and by all accounts, she had left shortly after. There were no hints of unusual plans. By now it was clear she'd come home after work. Her car keys hung in their usual spot by the door, but there were no notes, no messages, nothing out of the ordinary. It wasn't like her to leave us in the dark like this. Our marriage had always felt steady, not perfect, but certainly not shaky. We'd met 11 years ago at a party, and while we'd had our fair share of disagreements over the years, none seemed big enough to cast shadows over our life together. There were no financial troubles, no health crises, no secrets, at least none I knew of. From my perspective, we had a good life, a normal family dynamic, and a fulfilling relationship. Felicia had always promised she'd tell me if anything was ever wrong. Despite the growing unease, I clung to the hope that she'd walk through the door with an innocent explanation. But as hours turned into the early morning, that hope dimmed. By 3 a.m., I finally gave in to exhaustion and went to bed, praying she'd be beside me by morning. When I woke, the bed was still empty. Panic began to set in. I called her parents and close friends again, but no one had seen or heard from her. Her family was just as concerned as I was, their anxious calls coming in regularly, despite my promise to keep them updated. By lunchtime, I decided to involve the police. They urged me to stay calm, explaining that many missing person cases resolve themselves within days. Still, their reassurances did little to ease my worry. Returning home, I combed through the house for clues, and that's when I noticed the unsettling details. A suitcase was missing, along with some of her clothes, her laptop, medication, and even her passport. These weren't signs of a spontaneous outing. They suggested something far more deliberate. Yet there was no goodbye note, no explanation, not even a cryptic message. The deeper I dug, the more I realized how little I truly knew about what was going on, or why Felicia had disappeared without a trace. Our telecom account offered no clues. The log of incoming and outgoing calls to our landline revealed nothing unusual, no hint of where Felicia might have gone or who she'd been in contact with. Hoping for better luck, I turned to our joint bank account, but that too left me empty-handed. Unfortunately, I had no access to the accounts she kept in her name alone, nor could I view her cell phone records. They were entirely off-limits to me. Despite her missing passport, I doubted she had left the country. Too many of the items she always packed for trips abroad were still here at home. That thought gave me an idea. If Felicia was still nearby, she might return to the house while Gwen and I were away to pick up whatever else she needed. I couldn't prevent her from coming back, but I might be able to capture evidence of her visit. Acting on that hunch, I visited an electronics store and purchased 2 video cameras, one small and discreet for indoor use, and another designed for outdoor surveillance. The indoor camera was motion-activated and capable of recording audio, strategically positioned to monitor the entryway. No one could enter through the front or back door without triggering it. The outdoor camera, set to snap 10 photos per minute, covered the driveway. Reviewing the footage daily would be quick and straightforward. The days that followed were nothing short of a nightmare. Gwen and I were both struggling to cope. I tried to reassure her with empty promises that her mom would call us soon or come home any day now, but even I couldn't believe what I was saying. Neither could Gwen. Sleepless nights became routine, haunted by the same relentless questions. Where was Felicia? Why would she abandon us? Abandon Gwen? It was one thing for a wife to leave her husband, but for a mother to walk out on her 7-year-old child without a word, that was unimaginable. Especially when there were no signs of trouble, no health issues, no financial struggles, no tension in our marriage. I kept searching my mind for answers, but Felicia's disappearance remained an enigma. Finally, on Wednesday, something happened. I received a call from a police officer named Camilla Erickson, who wanted to meet. "Tell me when and where, and I'll be there," I replied immediately. "In 10 minutes at your house," she said. Camilla arrived right on time. She was younger than I expected, with blonde hair tied back in a ponytail, dressed casually in jeans and a red top. Her friendly demeanor and cheerful small talk with Gwen suggested she was playing the good cop role. Flashing me a warm smile, she asked, "Would it be all right if we used first names, Camilla and Lars?" I had no objections, though I privately doubted her ability to crack this case. Still, I remained polite and asked, "Would you like to start with a look around the house, or would you prefer to talk?" She opted for a conversation. I set Gwen up with her favorite DVD in the living room before joining Camilla at the kitchen table. As the coffee brewed, she explained her plans for the investigation, her tone light and conversational at first. Then she leaned in, her voice taking on a serious edge. "In cases like this, I'm here to help, but only if you're honest with me. If you lie, you'll find yourself in serious trouble. Can we agree to stick to the truth?" Her smile softened the warning, but her intent was clear. I understood. Husbands were often the first suspects in cases like this, and Camilla wasn't going to take me at my word without scrutiny. "Of course," I said, meeting her gaze. "I'll do whatever I can to help solve this mystery." The interview began, and I answered all of her questions truthfully. In return, she promised to check whether Felicia's phone had been used recently and to look for activity on her accounts. However, she cautioned that progress might be slow, given the summer holidays. She also had no objections to the video cameras I'd installed, which was a relief. Before leaving, Camilla had a brief and kind-hearted chat with Gwen, then turned to me with a pointed remark. "I have a daughter the same age. I can't imagine how anyone could choose to abandon their child." Her words reassured me that Felicia's disappearance would be treated as a priority. Still, I was all too aware of the situation I was in. In cases like this, the spouse was always under suspicion. Innocent or not, many had found themselves under a cloud of doubt, or worse, in jail, simply because they were the easiest target. I could only hope that by cooperating fully with Camilla, I'd avoid that fate, unless, of course, there was something about Felicia's disappearance that even I didn't know. By Thursday morning, Camilla arrived to collect Felicia's car for further investigation. When she returned on Friday for a follow-up, she informed me that Felicia's bank account had shown no activity since her disappearance. I shared that the cameras I'd installed hadn't picked up anything unusual either. Then, Camilla dropped a bombshell. "There are only 2 plausible explanations for Felicia's disappearance," she began. "Either you're somehow involved, or she has a compelling reason to stay away from you and Gwen. Honestly, that doesn't sit well with me, especially as a mother to a 7-year-old myself. But as I told you before, Lars, I'm on your side, as long as you're being truthful with me." Her words unsettled me, planting seeds of doubt. What if Felicia had somehow orchestrated this to frame me? The idea gnawed at me, and I voiced my fears to Camilla. She tried to reassure me, suggesting that Felicia likely trusted me to take care of Gwen. If anything, it wasn't hatred or malice driving her away. It could be something else entirely, like a passionate affair. Camilla speculated that if that were the case, Felicia might eventually reach out to one of us. I didn't know how to respond. The truth was, I had no idea what was going through Felicia's mind. Camilla briefly mentioned the possibility of involving the media, but dismissed it for now. With Felicia taking her suitcase and passport during peak holiday season, Her 1 week absence didn't seem alarming enough to draw public attention. Besides, media coverage could flood the investigation with useless tips. By Saturday evening, it had been 8 days since Felicia vanished, and we were no closer to finding her. On Monday, the 10th day, Camilla joined me for lunch. She shared that Felicia's smartphone had been off the entire time, which made tracing her movements nearly impossible. While there were some small clues from her car, they hadn't led anywhere concrete yet. Fortunately, Camilla now had additional support on the case, but progress was slow. Wednesday marked 12 days of Felicia's disappearance, coinciding with her mother's birthday. Gwen and I went to her grandparents' house for a barbecue. Felicia's brother-in-law, Magnus Lind, became a nuisance after sneaking out to his car for drinks. By the time he returned, he was clearly drunk. Even sober, Magnus wasn't someone I particularly liked. Now, emboldened by alcohol, he started hurling accusations, insinuating that I was behind Felicia's disappearance. Despite efforts from his wife and in-laws to calm him down, he refused to stop. Finally, I snapped. "One more word, Magnus, and you'll regret it," I warned, my patience worn thin. Magnus, unsteady on his feet, tried to take a swing at me. He missed completely and ended up sprawled on the ground, out cold. Deciding I'd had enough, I gathered Gwen, thanked her grandparents, and left the party. On the way home, we stopped at a supermarket to pick up a few essentials. While there, I ran into an old friend, and we ended up chatting for longer than I'd planned. Later that night, after Gwen was asleep, I checked the footage from the cameras. What I saw left me stunned. There she was, Felicia, captured clearly on the indoor camera. She looked healthy and calm, not like someone in distress. The outdoor footage, though affected by the rain, showed a black Mercedes-Benz GLC pulling into the driveway. Felicia had arrived alone, but the first two characters of the license plate were too blurry to identify. Realizing the significance of the discovery, I immediately called Camilla on her private number. She agreed the footage was a major breakthrough, but couldn't come over that night due to babysitting issues. I understood. I couldn't leave Gwen either. We arranged to review the recordings together the next morning. As I hung up, I found myself wondering if Camilla was a single mother. She'd never mentioned a spouse, but that wasn't my concern. What mattered was her genuine relief and enthusiasm. Maybe it was the breakthrough she'd been waiting for. Or perhaps she was glad her instincts about my innocence had been right all along. Either way, it felt like progress. The next morning, Camilla arrived bright and early, clearly excited. She reviewed the footage and nodded approvingly. "This is better than I expected," she said with a smile. Then she added, "I'm glad I trusted my gut about you. Some of my colleagues were certain you had a hand in Felicia's disappearance, but this footage speaks volumes." For the first time in days, I felt like we were finally moving toward answers. I gave Camilla a faint smile, appreciating her concern. "Thanks for all your help and for believing we'll find the answers," I said sincerely. She nodded but didn't sugarcoat her response. "We're not there yet," she reminded me. "Hopefully we'll get there soon. But Lars, when Felicia returns, if she does, promise me you won't do anything reckless. Not to her, and not to any man who might be involved. Don't let anger lead you into a situation you'll regret. Promise me." I shook my head, my frustration bubbling just beneath the surface. "You don't need to worry. Nothing will happen to Felicia or her lover. The only thing I plan to give her is a divorce, so she can live whatever life she wants. But why couldn't she just ask for one? Why sneak off and leave Gwen and me to deal with this mess?" Camilla's expression softened. "That's fair," she said. "I'll keep you updated as soon as we uncover more about that Mercedes and its owner. At this point, we need to determine if Felicia left willingly and why. If she did, she hasn't committed a crime, though I'll admit her actions haven't exactly been kind to her family." Her words confirmed what I already suspected. Felicia's case wasn't a top priority anymore. To the police, she was a runaway, not the victim of foul play. The investigation into the black Mercedes continued. Out of 8 possible matches, 6 were the same popular model in black. 4 of those vehicles were quickly ruled out because the owners lived too far from our town. Another was linked to a retired veterinarian in his 70s. While the vet preferred driving his smaller Nissan, his 22-year-old grandson often borrowed the Mercedes. The young man was eventually tracked down at the coast with his new girlfriend, entirely unrelated to the situation. The veterinarian, relieved to learn his grandson wasn't in trouble, was fully cooperative. That left one final possibility: a 39-year-old dentist who owned a flashy black Mercedes and lived in a newly built, extravagant house in town. He had quite the reputation, known both as a slumlord for profiting off rundown rental properties and as a controversial figure in local politics. His personal life was equally messy. He had 2 children from a previous marriage, though his ex-wife held full custody. His current wife, a member of parliament, was on a 2-month taxpayer-funded trip to Singapore, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand, supposedly studying communication issues in suburban areas. However, the tabloids had a field day with rumors that she was traveling alone with her party boss. While no affair was confirmed, the speculation made the dentist a local laughingstock. One afternoon, Camilla called, sounding frustrated. "We've hit a roadblock," she admitted. "The dentist isn't living in his new house. We found out he owns a large summer house by a lake, but without evidence that Felicia is there against her will, we can't legally enter the property. And if he denies knowing her, we're stuck." But Camilla wasn't ready to give up. She had a plan and needed my cooperation. I agreed without hesitation. With the police stretched thin during the summer holidays, finding a woman who'd left voluntarily wasn't high on their agenda. However, if we could provide proof that Felicia was at the summer house, the police could secure a warrant to search the property, even if the dentist tried to obstruct them. The plan was straightforward. A colleague of Camilla's, an avid birdwatcher, loaned me his equipment for a covert stakeout. Early the next morning, I would set up near the summer house and keep watch from dawn until dusk. The birdwatcher, conveniently my size, provided me with camouflage gear, including a net, a lightweight foldable ladder, and 2 green plastic jugs, one for water and the other for, well, necessities. He also lent me a high-powered camera with a zoom lens and shared tips on packing food for a long day in the trees. With my role in the plan set, I spent the rest of the day preparing. I drafted divorce papers, dropped Gwen off at her grandparents' house, packed enough food and water for the stakeout, and ensured my phone and the mini laptop Camilla had provided were fully charged. She emphasized conserving the laptop's battery. No unnecessary web browsing or distractions. My phone would remain in standby mode to save power, but I'd have to be cautious with everything else. The next morning, I was ready. Whatever lay ahead, I was determined to uncover the truth. At exactly 5 o'clock on the 14th day of Felicia's disappearance, the birdwatching officer and I were stationed deep in the woods overlooking the dentist's summer house. He pointed out a sturdy maple tree with plenty of branches and leaves to keep me well hidden. After running through final instructions, I unfolded the ladder, climbed up, pulled the ladder after me, and began setting up my makeshift hideout. Meanwhile, the officer went off to position an automatic camera facing the seaside, an area I couldn't see from my vantage point. Once he returned, he inspected my setup, gave me a thumbs up, and left. My perch, a makeshift swing I'd secured between 2 branches, was surprisingly comfortable. Settling in, I sent a quick text to Camilla. "All is well, 3G signal okay." Her reply came 2 hours later, a simple, "Good luck." The first sign of activity came around 7:30, when a car stopped by the mailbox to deliver the morning newspaper. 20 minutes later, a man stepped out of the house to fetch it, wearing nothing but red boxer shorts. Though I wasn't entirely sure it was the dentist, I felt confident enough to snap a few pictures. I downloaded the clearest ones to the laptop and forwarded them to Camilla. Her response was almost immediate. "It's him! Well done!" For the next couple of hours, the scene remained quiet until a small white Volkswagen Caddy, adorned with the Fresh Home logo, pulled into the driveway. 2 women in red overalls stepped out and went into the house. Fresh Home was one of the priciest home service companies in town, and the sight of them irritated me. It seemed like the dentist was going out of his way to spoil Felicia. I snapped pictures of the van and sent them to Camilla, hoping she could follow up with the maids later. About 30 minutes later, the garage door opened and the black Mercedes rolled out. 2 people were inside, but with the tinted windows and poor lighting, I couldn't confirm if one of them was Felicia. I sent the photos anyway. Once the maids left, I texted Camilla again. She responded with a touch of humor. "How's my monkey in the tree doing?" I replied, "No bananas in a maple." The hours dragged by uneventfully until around 1:30 in the morning when the Mercedes returned and slipped back into the garage. Unfortunately, I still couldn't confirm the identity of the occupants. Then, something unexpected happened. The front door opened and out stepped Felicia, wearing white shorts and a matching top. She walked to the mailbox, and I quickly captured several clear photos, sending them to Camilla. Her response was immediate. "Stay calm and don't do anything stupid. Please stay where you are, we're on our way. The DA has approved the warrant so we can go in, even if the dentist refuses. Just wait." Her message was clear. She was genuinely worried I might take matters into my own hands. I'd be lying if I said the thought hadn't crossed my mind, but I knew better. Acting on impulse would only create more trouble for everyone involved, myself included. Reluctantly, I stayed put and waited. About 50 minutes later, 2 patrol cars arrived at the house. One blocked the driveway near the garage, while Camilla headed for the front door with a uniformed officer in tow. Meanwhile, my birdwatcher friend and another officer moved toward the lakeside of the property, where the dentist's motorboat was docked. Camilla rang the doorbell several times, but no one answered. After a few minutes, she pulled out her phone and made a call, which also went unanswered. Finally, the uniformed officer used his car's loudspeaker to announce, "Police, we know you're inside. You have 5 minutes to open the door, or we'll break it down." For the first 4 minutes, nothing happened. Then, just as the deadline approached, the door burst open, and an enraged dentist stormed out, waving his arms wildly. Though I couldn't hear his words from my perch, his body language made it clear he wasn't offering a warm welcome. As the dentist continued his tirade, Camilla slipped around to the back of the house. Moments later, she reappeared with Felicia between her and the birdwatcher. They guided her to Camilla's car and placed her in the back seat, with Camilla sitting beside her and the birdwatcher up front. From what I could piece together, Felicia had tried to escape to the motorboat, while the dentist distracted the officers at the front door. Thankfully, Camilla's team had anticipated the move and was ready for it. Watching them drive away with Felicia, I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. At least now, we were finally getting answers. 10 minutes later, Felicia stepped out of the car and returned to the house with Camilla. Shortly after, my phone rang. Camilla's voice was calm but firm. "The case is officially closed," she said. Despite all the chaos Felicia had caused, leaving Gwen, her parents, me, and even the police scrambling, nothing she'd done was illegal. An adult has every right to leave their family and move in with a lover, no matter how careless or thoughtless the execution. Felicia had convinced the police she wasn't abducted or coerced. She had chosen this path of her own free will. I climbed down from the tree, feeling a mix of exhaustion and resignation. My birdwatching cop friend helped me pack up the equipment and offered me a ride home in his patrol car. On the way, I called Gwen to tell her I'd found her mom and that she was safe. Next, I informed Felicia's parents. While relieved to hear Felicia was unharmed, they were dismayed by her actions. When I explained what had happened, I made it clear that a divorce was inevitable. Before I stepped out of the patrol car, the officer turned to me and said, "Camilla put her heart into this case, and we're all glad she was right about you. But let me give you a piece of advice. Don't go looking for revenge. Camilla seems to like you, and doing something reckless would ruin any goodwill between you two." I nodded, appreciating his words. I won't let her down. To my surprise, Felicia showed up shortly after I got home, driving the same black Mercedes. This time, she was alone. After a brief exchange, she sat down to review the divorce papers. She accepted the terms without argument, which shocked me. But what stunned me even more was her willingness to grant me primary custody of Gwen. No pushback, no complaints. It was almost suspiciously easy. Curious, I asked her directly if she was struggling with any health or drug issues. She denied it, instead offering an explanation that left me reeling. According to Felicia, her disappearance was tied to her lover. He was in the middle of divorcing his wife, who she claimed was infamous for her behavior. To avoid complications with his own separation, he'd accepted a 6-month dental position in Namibia through HopeWorks, a national foreign aid organization. Felicia had been hired as his assistant for the trip. a role she assured me would be well paid. She justified abandoning her family by claiming she needed intense training for her new responsibilities, training her lover had provided. She admitted she was afraid that if I discovered her plans, I'd interfere, possibly sabotaging his opportunity in Africa. Her actions, she explained, had been a test of sorts, to see if she could handle being away from Gwen for an extended time. She only returned because the police assured her she was safe with me. I couldn't hold my frustration any longer. "This is unbelievable," I said, my voice tight with anger. "Your lover is divorcing his shameless wife, and yet he's here playing house with someone just as bad." Felicia bristled. "What's that supposed to mean?" "His wife didn't abandon her child or disappear without a word," I shot back. "Do you have any idea what could have happened to Gwen and me if the police or media decided I was responsible for your disappearance? I could have spent weeks in jail waiting for the truth to come out." The tension between us simmered as Felicia admitted she'd only known the dentist for 2 months and had been romantically involved with him for 1. Yet she insisted their connection was strong enough to take this leap together. She seemed genuinely shocked the police had tracked her down and asked how they managed it. I feigned ignorance, claiming I had no idea. Before she left to visit Gwen and her parents, Felicia promised to keep her phone on so we could reach her. She also vowed to cooperate fully with the divorce process. Watching her drive away in that oversized Mercedes, I felt a mix of relief and anger. I sat on the living room sofa, replaying everything in my mind, questioning whether I could have done anything differently. But deep down, I knew none of it mattered anymore. The damage was done, and my only priority was moving forward for Gwen's sake. Then, as if fate had intervened, there was a knock at the door. Standing there was Camilla. She stayed a while to comfort me, understanding the storm of emotions I was going through. With Felicia now found, it felt like the right moment to learn a little about Camilla's personal life. After all, she already knew just about everything about me. She didn't mind sharing. She told me she was a year younger than me, 34, and had been separated from her ex for 18 months before finalizing her divorce a year ago. Since then, she'd been working in our town, and as for boyfriends, none were in the picture. Then she asked if I had spoken to Felicia. I took a deep breath to steady myself before answering. I told her that Felicia had come home briefly, signed the divorce papers without argument, and granted me custody of Gwen because she was leaving for Africa with her lover. Camilla locked eyes with me, her tone firm yet caring. "Please don't disappoint me by seeking revenge. It's not worth it. Be honest with me. Can you promise to let go of any reckless ideas?" I nodded, her words cutting through the lingering anger in me. "I promise. And it's because I truly appreciate everything you've done for me. I'd like us to stay friends when all this is behind us." She gave me a soft smile. "Don't worry. I'll keep an eye on you and Gwen as a friend. You can call me anytime." That night, despite trying to stay calm, sleep didn't come easily. When I finally drifted off, I was pulled into a vivid nightmare. In it, I was speeding through a rough part of town known for its black market, intent on buying a pistol. The selection was slim, and the only thing available was a small 7.65 mm handgun with just 4 rounds. It wasn't much for a vendetta, but I figured it would be enough if I caught the dentist off guard. Things spiraled out of control the moment I arrived. The dentist was waiting, armed with a double-barreled shotgun. As if from an action movie, he fired without ever needing to reload. Desperately, I shot back. 2 of my bullets missed, while the others grazed his arm and leg, but he didn't even flinch. I ran into the woods, but he followed, still shooting, until I tumbled down a ravine. That's when I woke up, lying on the floor, heart pounding. Even after the nightmare, a bruised part of my ego whispered that I should hunt the dentist down and teach him a lesson for seducing my wife. But as I mulled it over, I decided against it. My reasons were clear. First, I'd promised Camilla, and I wouldn't break that trust. Second, if I did anything rash, it might cost the dentist his job in Africa. Frankly, I'd much rather see him and Felicia disappear to the other side of the world. Lastly, I realized that neither of them was worth the price of revenge. Let them rot together in Africa. The next day, Camilla stopped by again. She praised me for keeping my promise. "I'm glad you let it go," she said. "This is the better path." I nodded, feeling a weight lift. I don't care anymore if that soiled dove and her gigolo dentist fly off to Africa. All that matters now is taking care of my daughter." "That's the right attitude," she replied warmly. "And don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything. Being a single parent is tough, especially with a young daughter." "Thank you," I said, grateful for her support. It means a lot to both Gwen and me. A few days later, the story hit the tabloids. Someone in the police must have leaked the details. The headline was sensational. Parliament member's husband in an affair with married woman plans to take her to Africa. The article featured a topless photo of Felicia with the dentist behind the summer house, alongside paparazzi shots of the dentist's wife, also topless, cozying up to her party boss. I suspected the photo of Felicia had come from the birdwatcher's camera and made a mental note to thank him with a fine bottle of malt whiskey. Despite the public fallout, washing away 9 years of marriage wasn't easy. While our relationship had been far from perfect, there had been good times, and the memories left a hollow ache, especially during the long, lonely nights. Pretending I was fine took more energy than I liked to admit. But thanks to Camilla, my family, and close friends, I slowly began to heal. Felicia and I hadn't spoken much since she signed the divorce papers. Just a few brief texts to coordinate practical matters. I didn't ask about her life. Her parents kept me informed. She even sent Gwen a few postcards, but that was the extent of her efforts to stay in touch. With each passing day, I focused more on rebuilding my life and being the best father I could for Gwen. Whatever path Felicia had chosen, it was hers to walk. My priority was ensuring that Gwen and I moved forward together. Camilla quickly became a huge support for me, and before long we were speaking several times a week and spending more time together, often with our daughters. To our delight, Gwen and Astrid got along wonderfully, their budding friendship making every outing more enjoyable. One Saturday, we planned a shopping trip to the largest mall in the county, as both girls needed new clothes. The mall was a bit of a drive from our town, so we set aside most of the day for the adventure. That morning, I picked up Camilla and Astrid, and the four of us piled into the car. Camilla, who usually stuck to casual jeans, had opted for a short skirt that showcased her legs. After a few miles on the road, she noticed my glance and teased, "Hey, eyes on the road, mister, not on me." Her comment prompted giggles from the back seat, and Gwen piped up cheekily, "Be happy, he loves you." The car burst into laughter, and I glanced at Camilla, relieved to see her grinning. She turned to me, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Do you?" she asked playfully. I returned the grin. "Oh, yes, very much." Then Astrid chimed in from the back seat. "Do you need 2 bridesmaids?" More laughter followed, filling the car with warmth. Throughout the day, it was clear we were functioning like a happy family. No one protested when I suggested ending the day at my place with some fun and dinner. We stocked up on ingredients for a Tex-Mex feast, tacos, of course, being a favorite among the girls, and headed home. Gwen and Astrid took the lead in preparing the food, proudly showing off their cooking skills. The evening was filled with laughter, games, and countless giggles. By the time dinner was over and the girls were winding down, I managed to convince Camilla and Astrid to stay the night. After tucking the girls into bed, Camilla and I retreated to the living room with a bottle of Rioja, some cheese, and crackers. As we sipped our wine, Camilla broke the comfortable silence. "Do you miss Felicia?" she asked gently. I thought for a moment before answering honestly. Not as much as I thought I would. After everything she did, today I didn't think about her at all. Camilla smiled warmly. It was a great day for Astrid and me too. "What about your ex?" I asked. "Do you miss him?" "Sometimes," she admitted, "but it's happening less and less. And today I didn't think about him at all." To my surprise, she leaned in and hugged me, following it with a soft kiss. We talked a while longer before deciding to call it a night. When it was time to head to bed, Camilla surprised me again by opting to share the master bedroom with me instead of the spare room. She borrowed one of my t-shirts as a makeshift nightgown and teased, "Did you give me the shortest one on purpose?" I laughed. No need to hide those legs. She caught my smile and added quickly, "Sorry, my friend, but no funny business tonight. I'm in my most fertile time and don't take pills." I pulled her into a gentle hug and kissed her forehead. "I don't see a problem with your fertile period. In fact, I see it as an opportunity. A baby would make us a real family, tying us all together." Camilla chuckled, clearly amused. "Nice try, really nice try." "Think about it," I said with a wink. "You might just come around to the idea." We kissed, growing closer, But before things could go too far, Camilla stopped with a playful grin. "Too tired tonight. Don't worry, we'll have our time. Good night, darling." "Good night, darling," I replied, content but already imagining the promise of a deeper connection in the future. Around 2 in the morning, though, Camilla shook me awake. Her whisper broke the silence. "Are you sleeping?" Groggy, I mumbled. "Well, I was until now. What's going on?" Camilla's whisper stirred me from my half-sleep. "I've been thinking about what you said," she murmured. "About family. And I agree. I think it's time for us to start working on it." Her words left me momentarily stunned, but the warmth in her gaze melted away any hesitation. Afterward, we lay side by side, catching our breath in the quiet stillness, basking in the closeness of the moment. Breaking the silence, I turned to her, my voice soft yet earnest. "I love you, Camilla. And since we're talking about family, do you think you'd want to be married before we bring a baby into the world?" Camilla's eyes widened in surprise. "Are you serious? You mean that?" I smiled. "Yes, Camilla, I'm serious. Will you marry me?" Her laughter, filled with joy and relief, was the sweetest sound. "Of course I'll marry you. I love you so much," she replied, kissing me again. That night, we drifted between sleep and soft conversation, even sharing another brief moment of intimacy before dawn. By morning, everything felt different. As we gathered for breakfast, the sense of turning a new page in life was unmistakable. When we shared the news with Gwen and Astrid, their squeals of delight filled the house. "We're going to be bridesmaids!" they shouted, already planning their roles. In the weeks that followed, everything seemed to fall into place. Felicia and I agreed to sell the house, and, to our surprise, the bidding far exceeded our expectations. Once the sale was finalized, I transferred her share of the money to her account. Camilla and I decided to start fresh, leaving behind anything tied to the past. We auctioned off most of the furniture and belongings, earning more than we anticipated, which gave us a chance to plan our future in ways I hadn't thought possible. My contact with Felicia was limited to emails focused on financial matters and the occasional question about Gwen. She sent Gwen a few pictures and messages, mostly of exotic animals and flowers from Africa, but their communication was minimal. I left it entirely up to Gwen whether or not to respond. Meanwhile, gossip about Felicia and the dentist began to circulate around town. Some claimed Felicia had become pregnant by a wealthy local man in Africa, and that the dentist had left her for a younger woman. I didn't pay much attention to the rumors. None of it mattered to me anymore. Felicia was part of my past, and I was focused on my future with Camilla. Our relationship blossomed into something deeply fulfilling. Beyond the physical connection, our time together was filled with love, laughter, and the shared vision of building a meaningful life. When Camilla discovered she was pregnant, all 4 of us celebrated with excitement. Gwen and Astrid were thrilled to welcome a new sibling. We found and purchased our dream home, immersing ourselves in renovation plans to make it truly ours. As for the wedding, what started as a small, intimate affair began to grow thanks to Camilla's mother, a whirlwind of energy and enthusiasm. A corporate lawyer from a town 320 kilometers away, she brought fresh ideas to the planning process and even offered to pay for the event. While the wedding expanded beyond what we had envisioned, her generosity made it possible to create something truly special. Though there was still time to finalize the divorce, the delay gave us room to plan and prepare. Life as a blended family exceeded all expectations. Gwen and Astrid bonded like true sisters, balancing their individual interests with a deep connection that felt natural. Camilla and I, both having endured the pain of abandonment in our previous marriages, saw the blessing hidden in that rejection. It had led us to the right people, to the love we had always deserved. Of course, we didn't agree on everything, but we learned to find balance through compromise. Now, as I looked ahead, I knew without a doubt that the woman I would soon marry was my true partner. She loved me as deeply as I loved her, and together we were building the life we had always dreamed of.